I used to, a long time ago, back in the early 80s, I used to play tennis with Bill Halverson. And Bill Halverson was he was a producer of Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young. And he was drying out in Cincinnati. He was driving a cab. He was drying out from cocaine addiction, and he was addicted to alcohol. But we used to meet over and play tennis together. And he told me one time, he just occasionally just be playing, and he'd just tell me a story. And he said when the first Crosby, Stills and Nash record was made, what they did was Crosby, Stills and Nash would come up to his house at night with one guitar, and they would sing a song. And if they could get over on him with that three voices and that one song with one guitar, they knew it would be virtually impossible to fuck it up in the studio because it was that good.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be able to play a song and sing it, okay, without any other shit going on. Mm-hmm. If you can do that and you could say, wow, I get it, then you've got something that you can layer on top of it. And by the time you're not trying to polish a piece of shit, what you're trying to do is like, build something that really is something when you got it done. You know what I'm saying?
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Good story.
Yeah. So
that's no piece of shit.
Yeah. Wasn't talking about me, David.
This ain't shit. Yeah. Of course, now it's the shit means it's good.
Oh, yeah, it is the shit, actually.
That is true.
It is the shit.
Well, now it's just different production styles. Still, if it's a good song, it's still a good song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing that I think that a lot of songs are different because the priority of music has changed. I think melody, to me, what is like really, really important. And now it's not. It's more rhythm and how beats fit together, and certainly how the attitude of the singer, and whether a lot of times whether it lends itself to a visual presentation. Yep. And it's great. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's wonderful, but I'm just saying that, it has changed.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it will always continue to change, because I think that's like the cool thing about music. It never stops.
Right.
And going back to your point about, knowing when it sounds good with just a guitar and your voice, I think that's a great sort of philosophy to use. It's maybe why we were talking about this earlier, why I generally stick to the music first, or at least try to write that piece. Because I think you're exactly right. Because when you start to record stuff, it's easy to like take a bunch of things that sound cool, but when you try to put them together, sometimes it doesn't fit quite as well, or you need the other tracks to kind of bridge that gap. But when you're just forced to play it on a guitar like you did, because I actually hear that song, like I think you could do you could even do like a bigger sort of band sort of sound with that, because that bossa nova sound just lends itself to like that, I don't know, that 1930s sort of big band sound. So it's kind of what I hear. But you could do so much with it. But I was just curious to hear what other people thought.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, I'm probably a little different. I hear Jason, you and Doc always kind of go to the things that you can add, because I think you guys are like recording experts. I'm a solo musician, I go out and play my acoustic guitar and sing. And so when I hear something like that, I think of just how beautiful that is on its own. And I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm definitely not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's like the kind of difference in perspective, I heard the guitar on that, Rick, and I was like, oh man, that sounds great. I love that sound. And just that with a voice satisfies me,
Definitely.
So I think a lot of it has to do with how we individually function as writers. Some of us are very start to finish. I mean, we allow stuff to come in. Some of us are very organized. Some of us are not. I find I do a lot of sculpting, is how I like to think of it. That not the Steely Dan model totally, but something like you get you find, well, the song is almost always done before I get started recording anything, but it's not completed until afterwards, and I start taking things out, either of the song or out of the arrangement. Just because I guess I have a form of ADHD. I can't wait to hear how the next part's going to sound with it. It's like, well, what a good idea. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. But I think it goes back to what you said, Rick, about if it sounds good with just a guitar, and if it's a good song, it sounds good with a guitar. It's true. A good song will sound good with a guitar. And I think the same thing is true of contemporary stuff. Different emphasis on more rhythm. Still melody, much simpler harmonically than it used to be. But I think if you take away all the production and you still have a song, it's a good song.
Yeah, I do too. When you begin to write, are you putting your guitar down and then singing to it and then building on top of it?
Am I putting my guitar down and singing to
first, and then build the tune around that?
It depends. Sometimes sometimes it's one, sometimes it's another. If I'm working with a phrase and the phrase lends itself to a melody, that's what I'll go with, and I'll just see where it plays out.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll stare at a piece of paper for 3 weeks and I have 2 lines, and I pick up the guitar and I start to play those 2 lines, and suddenly I have the rest of my song.
Yeah.
So, I wish if there was a formula, I would be happy to share it with you, or sell it to you cheap. But that's not how that's just not the way I usually.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I've never written I never written something without a melody. But I think that what I would do if I did, I think I would start with a beat and sing it, and then I would build everything around it. That would seem, now is that the way you guys would approach?
See, I actually kind of save the melody more for the end. My sort of thought is I want to get the guitar part like kind of, and I'm being a guitarist, I'm obviously biased to the guitar, but I like to get the sort of rhythm part of the song figured out first. And because I feel like you can always add the melodies on top of things. And when I start with the melody, what I find is I always do a mediocre version on the rhythm guitar, which kind of blends into the background anyway. But when I kind of make sure like that's all sort of beautiful and cohesive first, then when I put my melody on top of it, it just, for me personally, it makes so much more sense. I think about the melody as I write the sort of other pieces, but I try to make sure I have like a really good rhythm guitar part first. And then to that, I then start working on the lyrics to kind of see what that song speaks to me, like, because really how I play it also will kind of dictate, I guess, where I take a song, but that's just how I do it. And then from there, I listen to it. And then actually, before I start writing lyrics, this is a new process for me that I've been doing, is I listen to the song and try to usually come up with like an intro line. So I think that's the hardest and sort of the most important part of the song is this, when are you going to start it? Where are you going to take it? And you got to kind of jump right into it. So for me, I kind of use that intro line to kind of come up with the idea. But then before I try to even write the other pieces of the song, I try to think through the concept of what am I trying to do? And then I use the lyrics as kind of like the fine detail that I use to kind of accomplish that sort of overall sort of bigger picture of where I'm trying to take it. I guess I like to know kind of where I want to go and then do it, but that's just my process. I don't know.
I can't imagine really starting. Well, I can because I just did it, but generally speaking, every time you have a lyric, you have a melody. You come up with a line, those words have a melody, they have a rhythm. And I was about to say I could never think of a melody without words, but the song I did last month started just that way. And I was like panicked. How am I going to put words to this? Because I have this melody and this chord changes, and it worked out well. But that's not, so that's
not typical.
I'll tell you the trick for me though, is that I also, once I come up with a concept, I start looking up words and adjectives of those words and start, even though I don't necessarily write them down, I at least have them sort of in my mind. And I look up sort of, and that was kind of described in that book, the How to Write Better Song Lyrics book, but he talks about sort of like the key of the theme of whatever the song is going to be about. So it could be like the spring weather in London, you know, and then what kind of goes along with that. And it could be like the rain, could be the flowers, could be the vibrant greens and the dark blues. You can just kind of think of those things and start looking up the words. And I kind of have this sort of word bank. And then once you have those words, you can make your rhymes easier, and you can kind of fit those words to those sort of melodies that you have. Because I hear those melodies, I know like this is what the song needs, kind of like vocally. I just don't know what that line is. But then when it kind of comes together, and then once you have that sort of concept, you just have more choices and you can kind of piece it together. So that's my approach.
Jason, what's the hardest part of writing a song for you?
You know, it's changed. At first it used to be the lyrics, but actually now the lyrics are becoming a lot easier. Now it's, I think I don't know. I don't really know what the hardest part is anymore, because right now I would say just trying to get the recording the way I want it. I've just been spending a lot of time with trying to get the tone and the sound that I really want in the song. But right now I would say that the lyrics have gone from the hardest part to almost the part I look forward to the most. But then maybe actually I know what the hardest part is still probably the concept, trying to figure out what I think that the song should be about. And maybe this is just my way of thinking about it, but I kind of see I'm sorry, I was just going to call them in, but it's kind of like how you brand yourself as a songwriter, and to think about sort of what you want to write about and sort of those themes. And so I think that's really the hardest thing, is trying to say like, what is so, how can I find something that the listener is going to hear it and say, yes, that makes sense that you'd write a song about that thing, whatever that is. And so to try to find those things that would universally make sense, yes, like I get that. So there should be a song about that. And so I'm constantly thinking about that when I'm trying to think of that intro line, and what is it about, and what am I trying to say? So I think that's definitely the hardest part.
I'm curious to hear what anyone else has to say about that too.
Very good discussion. Let's keep it up as long as you want, because we've only got David's music and maybe nothing if you want to. It's a very informative discussion, and not David Hirschberg music. We've got David Lloyd's music, which we have plenty of time for, and if we have time, we'll do. If you want to keep this discussion up, it's fine.
What I really love about this, and I remember quite a while ago, I asked, "Hey, can part of this meeting just be talking about process?" And I think I was kind of looking for a magic pill or something. What I really get out of this, and it makes sense, and I kind of knew this deep down in my heart anyway, is that it depends on the person, the songwriter. It also depends very much on the song. David Hirschberg, I think you were saying that, sometimes you go about it this way and sometimes you go about it this way. And Jason, I think you were saying the same. It comes down to, what does the song drive you to do, and I'm just finding that. And then you are each throwing in little tricks that you use too. So it's really informative for me. That's the point I wanted to make. So.
I think I was being too falsely poetic or something when I kind of explained the feeling I had that the song's already written, and I sort of got the privilege of discovering it. And then I heard I've heard a number of other songwriters say the same thing. It's one way of looking at it anyway, if it's true or not. There's a song out there, and you just keep throwing stuff in and taking stuff out, and throw crap in and take the crap out, and keep working like that. And it works when you found the song that's already exists in a way.
It was,
and maybe that's just too fluffy, but yeah.
Well, it is, because the thing is I don't know whether I ever want to know how in the fuck does this happen. I mean, I have no idea. And I don't want to even think about it.
Right.
I struggle all the time with this, but you just think, well, but that's the only explanation, Peter, that you just gave that I can figure out, that it must exist and I just must grab it somehow out of the ether or something, because I don't know where these ideas come from. Sometimes I look at this shit and I think, what in the world am I thinking? How did I get to that?
I could share that. I think divine intervention has a lot to do with it, because I'll be holding the pen and words will come out and I'm like, I have no idea what that word even means. And it fits and it makes sense, and somewhere deep in someone else's life, I guess, the stuff comes out. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
that's what I said earlier today, more or less, when I was talking about that verse with the monkey in that song. It's like I didn't know how it fit. It just, something told me that it belonged there. And that happens a lot.
Yeah, and maybe songwriting really is just kind of like this process of kind of finding the next sort of inspiration that just kind of fills that next piece. Because
makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if any of you guys meditate, but one of the things you discover in meditation to me is like there are layers and levels of your thinking, of your consciousness. And I think a lot of times I'm thinking about these songs and I don't even know it.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the back of my head, it's churning. Because, I mean, unlike with you, Steve, sometimes I just sit down and there it is. Fucking A, what up? You know what I mean? I didn't believe it, and it's the only process, the only explanation I can think of is that I've got this going on in my subconscious, and then I just sit down and it comes out. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah, it could be spiritual or it could be completely physical, that you've written the song, that you processed the song already, and now you just need to you don't have to, if you dig it out, it doesn't work as well. You got to listen and let it come out, because it's there. Just pay attention.
Yeah.
My thought is that some genius things come out of a non-genius body. I'll have words out there. Oh, wow, that is deep. How in the hell, like going with Rick, how the fuck did that happen? And it's there.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
isn't that fun? That's so much fun with that.
For you guys,
suddenly there you are.
Yeah.
For you guys, does it help when you record? Because I know for me, it's hard for me to both play the song and really give it that sort of level of thought simultaneously. And I found that when I just get a recording first and then just listen to it, that writing lyrics, and then also doing something where I can loop something really easily, like in GarageBand, it's just a lot easier for me. Because I don't know, does anyone else do stuff like that or no?
I can say, when I first started making my music, I did like write everything first and then like try to like hop into it. But like now I'm to the point where I'm comfortable where I could just like go straight into it and just get what I need to do and get it done. But like, when I did first start, I did write everything down first, and even when I did like go over with them the beats, I was like, that sound good. I was like, nah. So yeah, I definitely do that. I used to definitely do that sometimes.
I was going to say, I found that sometimes recording works and sometimes it inhibits me. What works best for me is to sort of pick up, if I have a germ of an idea, sometimes it's not even that, but just pick up a guitar, start with a phrase and let my mind, do the Rick meditation and just let stuff come. And then there's a point at which I think recording does help, because sort of imprints it onto your brain so that it can work in your subconscious when you're busy, like, I don't know, doing the dishes.
I wrote one of my best songs, Walking. I Miss Marie. I had this hook in my head. I miss Marie, and it's one of the best constructed things I've got. It's tight and it's been recorded by somebody else. So that process, and there was an article in the New York Times or something about why you get your best ideas in the shower. And there's something about get your brain to work on doing something that you do physical and you can forget about. And then the unconscious or subconscious starts to make itself aware, make itself known. Doc.
Yeah, this is all so informative. It helps so much. I love this conversation. Tom, I remember you asking that question. And I'm so glad that we're having that conversation. David Hirschberg, I want to go back to something you said, and Rick agreed with you. And it's a situation I find myself in often, or the last several songs I've written, where I've got the melody and the music in my head, but I don't have the lyrics. And I get it as far as like, I've got the recording, I've got this song that's ready. And you mentioned anxiety, David, the anxiety of like, oh shit, now I got to come up with words to fit this melody I've got. And I find myself in that situation. And the writing lyrics then becomes like, there's this anxiety around it, like, damn, I've got this song and I've got to, so I don't know. Can you speak a little bit more about that process? You said you encountered that.
Take a shower, take a walk, forget the song. It'll be there when you get back.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
unless it sucks, in which case it's no great loss.
No, I envy that. I envy that. Usually I'm starting with a phrase, some kind of dreaming of the sun, or some line that I think, wow, now that's I love the way that sounds to me phonetically. I mean, how it's dreaming of the sun, it's just like a nice, and I like that. And then I think, the sound of words is really important to me too. And I don't know whether I'm bullshitting myself or not, but I don't think so. I think, it really matters, a lot too. So, and I want to ask you guys, do you guys at night, do you lay in bed and wake up and think of songs or ideas or lines? Does that happen to you?
Yep.
I mean, it happens to me all the time.
I hate it.
I've got paper beside me on my bed, and I'm waking up Peggy all the time. She says, "What?" She doesn't even ask me. She knows what I'm doing because I thought, and sometimes it's bullshit, but a lot of times it's not. Somehow my mind is turning on this, and then oh shit, that's how. Okay, and I write it down, and I look at it the next day, and I think, yeah.
So and then you go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's
what I hate about it.
I envy that.
Yeah, not always. Sometimes it won't stop.
Yeah.
I guess these just keeps churning inside, which means I'm probably nuts. Somebody's certifiable, whatever.
Yeah, that could be.
But I envy you, Doc. I wish melodies. I like this melody on this tune. I really had to hone it. Now I'm learning more, and that's where the recording process sort of helps me. I listen and I think, that melody right there is not really happening for me. I'm not really feeling that. It's not, it's not emotive enough. So then I start just singing it again and trying to find something else, melody, wow. Melody is manna from heaven to me. It's like, wow. It's
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
point. I mean, Rick, can you let something go if you're having trouble finishing, making it work? Anybody else? Can you just let it go ever? Or do you have to keep working on it until it's done?
You see, I can let it go, David, because I got about 10 other ideas that I get.
Yep, exactly.
I don't, I just say, if it's not going to help, if it don't,
Yeah.
So
there'll be another one coming down the bay. They're like buses. There'll be another one.
And I really think if you got something that's good, it'll stick around and it'll be there when you get back to it. And I sort of had that happen to me recently, and it was really surprising. But I mean, very obviously, I waited a couple of years to pick up a song that I thought needed something, but I didn't want to deal with it, and I just let it go, and it came back really easily. And that happens on a micro scale too.